We're just outside of Bilth Wells at a company called BSW Timber, which are a timber yard that manufactures square timber from the round timber, larch and spruce grown in mid Wales here. The project we've been working on with BSW Timber is managing the runoff from their timber yards during rainfall. So we manage and look after their reedbed treatment area, which we refurbished about 5 years ago. Now there's annual maintenance that we undertake on the reedbed to keep it working and to keep them within the discharge consents that they have to meet from the National Resource Wales. Challenges from some of the water runoff. Obviously we're in mid Wales, so there's lots of water to run off. That's one of the main challenges. But it's about undertaking the work while there's active runoff and keeping within discharge consents. So the work has to be managed carefully and coordinated carefully, and so we're not disturbing too much spoil and soil and silt at any one point that would then feed on sort of further down the system. Being a timber yard, there's a lot of sawdust and a lot of leachate from the bark chippings. So the water, there's quite a lot of suspended solids. The water's discoloured from the tannins in the barks and the sugars in the cambium layer. So there's a lot of quite rich organic matter within the waters that we need to treat. But we're using reedbeds as a natural process to treat the water before it goes through, in a way creating like a peat bog, so the water's percolating through the soils rather than just flowing straight down a ditch and straight out into the river. And if we can use the natural resources, we're lucky here because we've got the space and we've got gravity on our side, so we've got the landfall that we can use, so we don't require any pumps on the system. It's purely using the landform and using gravity and the fact that hopefully always water flows downhill. But that if we can then sort of percolate the water through a large area of reed stems, we've got 2 or 3 acres here under the reedbed. In slowing the water down as much as possible, we can drop out as much of the suspended solids as possible and give a chance for the bacteria and the fungi that live in the water column to work their way through the organic matter that's in the water. Process of the water, obviously it drops onto the timber yard hard standing and the roof structures. That then feeds out into the drainage that's within the timber yard. That and the outlet from the timber yard then just comes into a feeder ditch. We run that through a series of lagoons to drop out as much coarse organic matter as we can. Sawdust, sediment, bark chippings, material like that. And then the liquid that comes off of there can be further treated, flowing it as slowly as possible through the soils, through the reedbed treatment, and it percolates through the reeds. The ongoing maintenance is mostly desilting of the lagoons, so they every few years they'll become silted up. If we don't desilt them, then that silt will start getting resuspended and carried on further down the ditch. So once every 2 or 3 years we desilt any of the lagoons. In the long run we'll be cutting the reeds and taking the reed litter off, again just to try and lengthen the lifespan of the reedbed. But luckily we've got enough fall that might be a process of over 10 years or 20 years time. We'll need to re-establish the gradients in the reeds in order to settle the water as slowly as possible. We tested a number of points. The key specific ones we're interested in is what's the quality of water when it comes out of the timber yard, and what's the quality of the water when it leaves the reedbed. And it's the Natural Resource Wales that they've got a discharge consent as it leaves the site here. So that's our key consideration. That's our key testing point, if you like. The key type criteria we're looking at is working with a national laboratory. So we take samples, we then send them off to a national laboratory. They're tested for a number of parameters, which will include typically sort of biological oxygen demand, or BOD, suspended solids, and the pH levels. Also we can test for a number of nutrients, sort of nitrates and phosphates, that are getting into the water to check that we're keeping within the discharge parameters.